checking the it was funny. I said, yeah, I'll go. And then I'm going to go live on YouTube. I said, yeah, I'll go. And then I checked the page and they're like, cool, you're speaking. So I'm like, okay, great. Fantastic. Good. Cool. Well, welcome everybody. We're live on both spots, YouTube and the private Facebook group. So as we always like to do, we're going to start off with our simultaneous squeeze. So we're just going to take a deep breath in and then hold it and squeeze it for 5 seconds. And then we're going to take a slow, steady exhale from there. Okay, ready? So in 3, 2, 1, breathe in. And then a little sip at the top. Squeeze. And then exhale slowly. Very nice. Wow. If I could just stay in that feeling for a couple hours, that'd be fantastic. If there's only a way. Could you actually feel that good for a sustained amount of time? I think you could. Could take some effort, but cool. How do you feel? Did you feel something good? Write yes in the chat if you're like, ooh, okay, I felt something there. Right, like, no, not sure what to do. If you didn't get the effect, you should feel something. And then we'll go over the instructions on how to do that later. You got to stick around for the end of the video to learn how to do the method. But so here we go. So in terms of the content of today's video, we're going to be talking about, I'm going to paste that in the chat, improving HRV for vagal recovery using resonance breathing. This is definitely, I think, one of the hottest topics in practical daily applications of vagus nerve related stuff. You do, generally speaking, have to understand how to physically feel how your vagus nerve health is in any one given time. So it's important to understand where if you don't have access to a tool, if you don't have access to software, you're just sitting on a bus, on a train, on a plane, on an automobile, you're somewhere, you don't have any tools with you. How could you tangibly feel like, how's my autonomic system doing right now? That's the key thing you want to be able to ask yourself, and you want to be able to answer that question. So here I'm going to teach you a couple of things you can do easily, safely at home without any tools. No hardware, no software, nothing. You don't have to pay a penny. No pennies, no dollars required to be able to track your HRV somewhat. It's going to be very basic, but it's going to be a start. And then tomorrow we'll talk about how do you get kind of more clinical, more scientific, more, track it with numbers and math. We're going to go over that tomorrow. But just to get some starter points in, we're going to talk about a little bit, what is HRV? What are we looking for? How does the vagus nerve play a role in all of this? What's good? What's bad? And then I'll teach you a technique to either feel your heart rate, calculate in your head, I'll give you a little bit of an estimate on how to calculate rough HRV numbers. How am I able to do that? Because I use a ton of technology. I have thousands of dollars worth of vagus nerve, everything. So that means tracking, stimulating, everything. So I know quite a bit about how to teach you how to do it without any technology. That's how I'm able to do that. But so generally speaking, you're probably going to hear about HRV, heart rate variability, in all kinds of blogs on health and the vagus nerve. So you're like, what is HRV? Tangibly, is HRV an important thing? Generally, yes. Is HRV important in a chronic health condition? I would say equally, if not more so. Probably, I would say if you have a chronic health condition, something like an autoimmune condition, if you think you have autonomic dysfunction, your sleep is not good, you're like, yeah, Sterling, like I've definitely found that some of those things you talk about, some of those things that I tangibly talk about, like symptoms of vagus nerve dysfunction, if you have any of those symptoms, then HRV could become extremely important for you to to understand and to work with a little bit. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of text messages all of a sudden, and I want them to stop. Trying to coordinate this talk in San Diego, so getting a lot of texts about that. So generally speaking, heart rate variability, if you're not good, is really important. If you're 20 and you've got great health, you can totally ignore it. Not a big deal. Although those who are in their 20s and their 30s who do track their HRV have kind of an unfair advantage at seeing their inner health from day to day. So typically people measure their heart rate variability when they sleep and right when they wake up. And the heart rate variability is a measurement of when you breathe in and when you breathe out, the exact numerical shift in time between heartbeats. So if your heart beats at 60 beats per minute, which is slow, relatively slow, or 50 beats per minute, that's the low end of the variation. And then that should happen when you're exhaling. Like when you exhale all the way and you're really calm, your heart rate will slow down. When you breathe in, then you're going to find that your heart rate will increase up to maybe 70, 80, 90 beats per minute. So you should see a difference in your heart rate between breathing in and breathing out. That represents the variability in your heart rate. So it's heart rate variability. Coordinated, especially, this is where the math and the hardware comes in, which we will cover tomorrow. But today is just going to be from a tangible, natural, organic, so to speak. Like I'm going to have you place your fingers here and try to feel your heartbeat or find your heartbeat on your wrist or just check in with yourself. However you feel your heartbeat, we're just going to do that today. Tomorrow we're going to get quite a bit more advanced. So these are important, like part 1, part 2. If you do breathe in and you have no change in your heart rate, it doesn't go up, it doesn't go down, I would imagine your heart rate is generally elevated, around 80 to 90 beats per minute or higher. And if you breathe in, if you really go but your heart rate just stays the exact same, there's no change in your breathing. When you breathe in and breathe out and there's no change in your heart rate, then your heart rate variability would be low. And that's bad. Generally speaking, from a good health standpoint, having no change in your heart rate is bad. This is one thing I learned a long time ago by working over in a hardware accelerator over in Shenzhen, China, back in 2015, from a gentleman who became actually quite a good friend of mine, Rohan. He runs a company called Leaf, and they manufacture some pretty advanced hardware that you place on your chest. And it uses EKG to measure your heart rate in real time and give you direct instructions on exactly how to breathe. So if you want, again, I'm not doing a pitch, not funded, don't make any money from any of this, but there are tools that can give you some pretty hardcore, very impressive feedback that are used by Stanford doctors, neuroscientists with all of their clients. So we will be talking about basic stuff and advanced stuff. But what I learned from him, which once I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. But prior to that, it was just oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. And it would have significance in later years when, again, you experience things like catching COVID, for instance. You go, wow, my heart rate is really, really high. I don't know why. And I don't feel good. What's going on? So having that knowledge prepared me to understand what was really happening when I, for instance, did catch COVID early on. Happened to be in China at the time, unfortunately. But you get some insight by knowing some of these key little details. Jody, it's related. It is related. Yeah. So how about this, Jody? I will get to it. I will definitely incorporate high blood pressure for sure. We are using the measurement more of heart rate right now because we're talking about HRV, heart rate variability. However, your heart rate is a counteracting force if your blood pressure is either high or low. So if your blood pressure is really low, then your body starts to increase your heart rate. And if your blood pressure is really high, then your body tries to decrease your heart rate. So this is like almost directionally next to it, but just to reduce complexity, because people, attention spans these days, I want to make sure people get me clearly. We'll have to return to that more in full in a little bit. So anyway, hope that helps. I would love to get to that, but I got to stick with the main thing right now. But good to see you, Jody. So anyway, back to this. What I learned from my friend developing HRV tracking technology, like an FDA-approved, like clinical grade devices, is that if your heart rate just stays steady, and it's like a perfect metronome, like a, and it doesn't change at all, that puts pressure. Basically, your blood vessels need variation in your blood pressure and your heart rate to kind of keep them fluid and limber. But if your heart rate stays exactly the same, then all those blood vessels can actually develop, I think it's atherosclerosis, which you become more likely to develop plaques on your arteries with something like low heart rate variability. So if you have low heart rate variability like one day out of the year, that's fine. But with the tools that we're going to share more tomorrow, you can start to develop a long-term tracking trend of your heart rate variability. And if you study a lot about health in the way that I do, and you're interested in the vagus nerve in the way that I am, like to an extreme degree, then you're always going to find HRV comes up. So this is a very important topic. It's probably one of the best. It's potentially one of the most practical and applicable biomarkers related to autonomic health that there is. And that's a combination of ease of measurement. You don't have to draw blood to measure your HRV. You could just wear a finger heart rate monitor, and there are certain versions that can measure your heart rate and calculate your heart rate variability. There's certain watches. Somebody's doing like yard work outside, and it was like, well, what the hell is that? It's that time of year. So you can wear like a Whoop band. Again, all links for all this kind of stuff I'll share tomorrow in a document, so you'll have that stuff. But yeah, so there's lots of ways to track it and create a long-term tracking of HRV. So what else is important about HRV? Generally speaking, good numbers, reference numbers to know is that if you're the first thing to know is that every device that's on the market measures HRV a little bit differently. There are some standardization calculations you can have with heart rate variability, but there's like RMSSD, HRV, low HRV, high HRV, and then there's also, every company seems to have some proprietary way to display the HRV that's different so that they can stand out, which just kind of complicates things. So you can't really compare, generally speaking, you can't compare HRV numbers between one person to the next without knowing, I mean, you have to know a lot. What version of the device did they have? Was it version 3 or was it 4? That can make a difference. What company was doing the calculations? That can make a difference. Honestly, even the HRV numbers that you see from year to year can be influenced by companies making secret changes to the HRV number calculation without you even knowing it. So you can't be entirely sure that from year to year that the numbers that you're seeing are the same. So this creates a lot of issues with HRV generally. So if you see somebody blank, my HRV is like 192, be like, okay, I mean, that's cool. What device did you use? When did you measure it? Was it in the morning? Was it at nighttime? Was it while you were asleep? What version of the software was it? I mean, there's a lot of, be dubious of like just seeing a number. The main thing with HRV is probably going to be a long-term trend. So an HRV number in a one single moment of time doesn't say a massive amount, relatively speaking. But it can be a kind of a good way to check in with yourself. Just be like, okay, I'm feeling this way right now. What is my HRV generally telling me about why I'm feeling this way from a physical perspective? So that's the thing about HRV from a hardware, software number perspective. In terms of the numbers that you should, generally speaking, the numbers you're going to see thrown around as optimal, above average, are going to be anything that's like 60 milliseconds or higher. And then anything that's 30, I would say anything that's like, if your number is like 9 or 11 in terms of milliseconds, that's basically it's as little change as you could possibly get. Your heart rate's always going to have a fraction of variation, but if it's like 9 milliseconds in variation, then that's bad. That's bad. Even by any metric. It's almost like these devices are more accurate at giving you an HRV number if it's really bad versus when someone says, my HRV was 279. It's like, well, I don't even believe that, honestly. Like, it's probably more like 82. But some of these devices, honestly, if you're running, which most people are running or doing, I don't know, they're doing things, they're moving. These things aren't accurate. If you skip a beat, that might show that there was, a big gap in heart rate. So there can be issues with those kinds of numbers. So good things to know about HRV, generally speaking, going forward as you try to evaluate what kind of device should I get? How should I compare? Should I feel good about my numbers? Should I feel bad about my numbers? These are kind of important distinctions to have. The other thing that I think is important is that point about checking in with yourself. So we want to go over the concept just first, checking in with yourself, trying to create a mental model of how you measure your heart rate and how you picture your heart rate variability and what's going on and why that's important. Because you could just say real time, like if we just kind of take a moment and look around in our inner head and go, how am I feeling right now? How do I feel? What's going on? You might be like, my mouth is a little bit dry. My voice sounds a little disembodied, maybe, right? I've actually literally been on coaching calls all day long. So I've been doing tons of calls today, long calls too, with my clients. So I probably talked a lot, admittedly. And then I'm doing this again. So here we are. This is the power of the vagus nerve. If you've got a good vagus nerve, you can talk for a long time. So that's good. So here's the key thing. You always want to keep track of how you feel, check in with yourself and go, this is how I feel. Then you want to look one level deeper, ideally, and just first, before you even worry about heart rate variability or even your heart rate, the first next step that's good to check in. So it's kind of like layers and getting more focused. Technology lets you get really there's a difference between looking at some water on your finger or looking a little bit of dirt versus putting it under a microscope. There's kind of different levels of awareness that you get there. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about putting your heart rate variability under a microscope. Today, we're going to talk about, you're out in the wilderness, you got a little bit of a little interesting little speck of, I don't know, a little rock on your fingertip, you go look, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. Oh, right? Nothing scientific per se about it. Tomorrow we're going to go to science land. So today we're going to say organic. So first thing you do, how do I feel? Second thing you do is check in with your breath. And rather than just breathing, start doing paced breathing. And this is, I'm planting the seed now that pacing your breath in some way by kind of keeping it slow and steady in and out is a good technique. And that's going to be important when we talk the technology part tomorrow, because it's going to want you to be very particular about how you breathe so it can get an accurate measurement. But it's even important for you. It's not just important for the tech, it's important for you. Because your vagus nerve can't express itself unless within the envelope, within the space of generally breath, which sounds kind of, I mean, doesn't that sound like bumper sticker? The vagus nerve can only express itself unless in the container of your breath. That's actually kind of wise to say. So good job, me. So first you check in with your body, then you go, okay, let's try breathing. So you're going to just do some paced breathing. That's all it is. Now everybody's got all kinds of different breathing techniques that they like. You know, if you've been exposed to Huberman, you're like, okay, it's a 4-7-8. That's super important. I've been totally indoctrinated. That's like the important thing. And if you know like Dave Asprey, it's like, oh no, it's a 4-4-4-4 box breathing, and that's the best way according to, you know, Ramachandran, the guru from India. That's the best way to get in touch with your spirit. I'm not very dogmatic about it, and as you'll see tomorrow, I'll show you that there's an app that uses nothing more than your camera phone and actually tests that. So you can actually test, if I do 4-7-8 breathing, 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out, that if you do that, does your heart rate variability, which is kind of the, you know, it's the metric to guide how you pace your breathing. HRV can be a good metric to see, is the breathing I'm doing getting the desired result, which is calming yourself autonomically. Unless you want to do the opposite. To be fair here, a little asterisk is that there are types of breathing that people will do intentionally to make their body feel really hot, to increase sympathetic tone. You can stress yourself out with breath. Certain Navy SEALs, before they go and bust down a door, guns a-blazing, they have certain techniques to breathe, and they're not trying to get zenned out, or they're not trying to get blissed out or anything like that. But we're not going to focus on that kind of thing. So there are ways to breathe. But if you're going to do something like 4-7-8 breathing, or box breathing, or 4-6 breathing, or 5-5 breathing, or whatever, just know that you're trying to influence if the objective of that, the purpose of that is to relax, that, just so you know, we'll go over this tomorrow, there are apps that you can use to measure exactly how your HRV responds to said breathing. So keep that in the back of your mind, that just, 4-7-8 is good old wives' tale wisdom. Just like, wash your hands is a good idea, but should you wash your hands with soap, with hot water, for 30 seconds? Like, there are better ways to do hand washing, and there are better ways to do breathing if your objective is to calm yourself down. So I would just say, generally speaking, general rule from my observation is that 4 seconds breathing in and 6 seconds out is about the right thing to, on average, is what those resonance breathing apps will show, that it's almost always going to be more like short breath in, so a fast and shortened time breath in, and then a longer, slower, more controlled breath restricted by kind of like doing this, or there's even some devices you can use that you put in your mouth, like a little kind of a straw kind of device, like these Japanese, like very kind of Zen like cool things, like made out of gold, and you wear them like a necklace. They're really cool. And you hold them up to your mouth, and they intentionally they restrict the flow of air so that it takes almost exactly about 6 to 7 seconds to blow out through this device, through this tube. So you're like, and then once you've exhaled more or less most of your lungs, then you breathe in again for 4 seconds. So I would say, generally speaking, from what the software shows, the ones that calculate HRV improvements from breathing, is that a 4 in, 6 out breath is almost always going to be close enough. That's closer than 5-5, and that's closer than 4-7-8 even. It's closer even than box breathing. 4 in, 6 out, according to what we're going to talk about more in part 2 tomorrow, which is using tech to clinically validate, am I doing this right or am I not? So first thing you do, check in with your body. So first thing is, just if you're just trying to like be like, how do I feel really? Like, how do I actually organically do a check-in? How do you do organic biofeedback without spending any money, without spending any dollars, without downloading any apps? How do you organically do what these $100+ devices do? You just go, okay, how does Jody feel right now? Does she feel stressed? Does she feel hot? Does she feel cold? Generally speaking, just kind of take an accounting of you. Next thing you do is start breathing. So you're going to start breathing. So you're going to go, okay, cool. So I learned from this guy, Sterling Cooley, I could breathe in for 4 seconds, slowly through the mouth, and slowly out through the mouth. Now, I think a little bit better would be the breathe in through the nose on the inhale, and then exhale through the mouth on the exhale part for the 6 seconds. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just about that rate, right? So you could do it too if you want. I'll count, you breathe, because it never works if I'm breathing. It always sounds like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'll just count. You can breathe. So we'll just go through 4. When I'm counting to 4, it's inhale through the nose. And when I'm counting to 6, I'll be pointing down, and you count out by breathing out through the mouth, like you're blowing out of a tube, like a little whistle, but doesn't make any noise, just out of your mouth. So, ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's what you would do. First thing, check in with your body. Second thing, breathe. Do a 4-6 breath. Then, without checking your heart rate, just take a second reading on your body. After you do that, do you feel subjectively a little bit better than you felt before? If you felt a little bit better, then it means that I could just tell you by default, without having to measure anything, that breathing that you did, if you felt a little bit of a increased calmness, that your HRV would have just by default improved. I don't have to measure it to be like, okay, if you did breathing properly, in through your nose for 4 seconds, out through your mouth, slow and controlled for 6 seconds, and you go, yeah, I feel a little bit different. and I feel a little bit more calm. I would know almost I would bet money that your HRV improved. Your HRV number would have gone up. Number go up, good. Number go bad, down. Number go down is bad. Number go up is good. That's it. So, yeah. Okay. So now you have those. Now then kind of the fourth step. So we have 1, check in with your body. 2, breathe. 3, check in with your body again and see if you feel different. 4th now is going to be to find your heart rate. So number 4 is we're going to go and find naturally, organically, without any devices, where is your heart? So if you already know a place to find your heart rate, go find that now. A couple places that I like to encourage people to do is right here, right at the very base of your neck, right at the very top of your rib cage. So I usually take 2 fingers and place it right here. And if you just kind of gently push in there, you have some blood vessels that pump up and down through here. So you can just kind of, you can feel it there. Another place to do it would actually be right here in your neck. So if you take your finger, it's usually going to be your middle finger, but it could be your index finger, just with the 2. You're just going to place it right here, kind of between the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and then between where, for me, where my Adam's apple device would be right here. This bad boy. This thing. Right? So you're going to place your finger kind of in here. Your vagus nerve is also in there, but you also have, yes, good. Thank you, Lori, for joining too. Yes, definitely. Okay, bye, Bob. Thanks, Lori. I'll see you. Bob's not here today. But so you're going to take 2 fingers. You're going to place them here. And you should be able to get a pretty good reading on your heart rate right here. No matter what you do, if you're breathing in, breathing out, just 2 fingers right here. You know, Scout's honor kind of thing. Place it here. Just like that. Good. So you're taking the reading, you're checking, you can feel it. Other place would be on your wrist. So if you basically place your finger on one of the veins right here, I just placed 2 fingers again, right here on the wrist. And you just kind of feel it. You'll feel, I'm feeling it under my index finger, right where my blood vessel is pumping. And I can feel it. I can feel it. If you have a really bad headache, if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you'll probably be able to feel it in your head. So not ideal and not very predictable, and don't count on that happening. But so cool. If you could in the chat, just so I know I'm not skipping anything, write in the chat, yes, if you found your heart rate somehow. If you didn't, just type no or can't find. But if you did find your heart rate, you can type in HR, yes, something like that, just so I can get kind of a gauge of the class. Okay, good. So Jody, you did your yes, good. Anyone else in the chat? I know Charlene is around. She might be, at a baseball game. Okay, good. Okay, so we got a yes and a yes. Barb, okay, good. Hey, good to see you, Barb. Good. Good. Okay, good. Okay, so I gave enough instructions. Now, remember, we're on step 4 here. So wherever you can feel your heart rate. Oh, and Mary, thank you. Good. Hey, good to see you, Mary, again. Good. So wherever you find your heart rate is most detectable, you're going to use that. For me, I love this spot, but this spot is super powerful. I can feel my heart rate very strongly right here. And this probably is the best spot, honestly. Now, you don't want to press in really hard because you could constrict blood flow to your brain momentarily, But also one other thing is just a little asterisk here as well. You might really benefit from this. If you ever wake up and you have a really bad throbbing headache, try placing your finger in there and pushing in. And you can kind of, part of the reason you got a headache that's a throbbing pain is because your brain blood vessels are in a little bit of pain, and it's that throbbing of blood that's causing that expansion and shrinking of the endothelial blood cells, the capillaries, and that's creating some pain in your head. If you press in here and you actually restrict blood flow to your brain, you can actually eliminate a headache if it's the throbbing kind of headache. Sometimes I'll do this, I'll kind of press in here, and it will make the headache go away. Unfortunately, you have to do it for probably about 5 minutes to give your brain some time to kind of clear. So anyway, it might be helpful for you. But remember, we're on stage 4. So you just did your breathing, then you did your check-in. Now what you're going to do is find your heart rate, which is step number 4. And then step number 5 is you're going to again then do the same breathing cycle. Yeah, good. Cool. Good, Jody. Yeah, I mean, it's like amazing that I figured it out. I don't know why. I was just pressing into my neck and like, oh my God, it stopped my headache. That was amazing. So you push in. Well, okay, so take that and file that away for later. We're not trying to press in and restrict blood flow right now. We're just trying to detect our heart rate. So detect your heart rate at stage 4 or step 4. Okay. I got to stop talking so I can make sure I can feel it. Then we're going to do again the 4 seconds breathing in, then the 6 seconds breathing out. We're going to do that same breathing resonance thing that we did before, but this time you're going to just feel your heartbeat. And I want you to put on the hat, if you could. I want you to put on the thinking cap, like, okay, I'm taking on the role of this type of person. You are in a band. You are a drummer. And you are trying to get the sense for the beat of the band. You are a musician or a conductor or a symphony orchestra conductor, and you're trying to keep the whole symphonic, all the players in harmony and on beat. Okay? So you want to be really good at determining if you're on a metronome type of heartbeat or if there's some kind of a change, if your beat's getting faster or slower. So that's kind of that's all you're looking for. You're not trying to detect if your heartbeat feels big, light, if it's pumping a lot of blood, if it's pumping a little bit of blood, nothing like that. You're just trying to get a sense for, like, if I were to tap the beat of a song, Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, right? So you're trying to get into that metronomic kind of state of mind. Anything that matches a single beat means that you have a steady beat per minute heart rate. And remember, that's, again, you can kind of be like, okay, that's not optimal, but the breathing can fix that. So the more that you breathe in and the more that you breathe out, if you get that matching and mirroring through the breathing, then what you should find is that when you initially do this, that your heart rate might be pretty steady, but as you start to get that into that that you should see that the highest point of the breath and then the lowest point of the breath, that there is a distinct syncopation difference, a beat speed change, faster heart rate, and a slower heart rate when you're breathing. And then, maybe and hopefully, maybe you'll feel a little bit different. But just because we're trying to train you like this type of training, I know it seems rudimentary, but if you get this, you'll be better equipped to understand your HRV than the people who just go out and spend the $200 or the $400 on those HRV tracking devices. And I'm teaching you this from a perspective of trust me, I've done all that. I've got a Whoop, I've got an Apple Watch, I've got an Aura, I've got a Leaf, I've got a Polar, I've got every app on my phone. I've basically owned every type of these devices that you can have, everything that you can buy. So I know what you're looking for ultimately. On the other end of using those for 3 years, you should develop a skill set. You shouldn't be just dependent on these. So I'm just teaching you this from like, you're going to be really good at this, but I know it's basic, but it's super important. So step 5, you're going to, again, find your heart rate. And then step 6 is just do all the breathing again. Do all the breathing again and monitor if your heart rate changes faster, slower with the breathing. We'll talk about implications after that, but let's actually do this. So basically, we're going to do step 5 and step 6. Step 5 is find your heart rate. And then step 6 is going to be to breathe in for 4 seconds through your nose. Breathe out 6 seconds through your mouth with your breath restricted a little bit so you can kind of have a slow, steady exhale against a little bit of pressure. You should always kind of exhale against a little tiny bit of pressure from your mouth, almost like if you were a kid again and you were trying to whistle because your older sister could whistle, but you couldn't whistle. But no whistling, just like that. That actually helps to get your vagus nerve working a little bit. So it increases your chances of getting this to work. So step number 5, you place your finger here, and then I'll do the counting. I'm not going to do the breathing. You do the breathing because it doesn't sound right when I do the breathing and all that stuff. So ready? Okay, so find your heart rate. For just 5 seconds, is it steady? Okay, now ready? Here we go. You're going to just breathe in through your nose. Now, in, 2, 3, 4, out from the mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, in, 1, 2, 3, 4, out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now just hold still for a second. Keep measuring your neck. And return back to kind of just normal breath while still monitoring. And just kind of get a sense. Did you notice anything changing in your heart rate? That's all you're looking for. That's it. Not necessarily if you feel different. Once again, you don't want to overwhelm your brain with sensory overload. So, good. Okay, so now relax. Okay, so I'm curious, in the chat, doing step 5, which is acquiring your heart rate, and then step 6, doing the breathing, did you notice a difference? Did you notice any perceptible change of your heart rate getting faster and slower during some of those 4 in, 6 out breaths that we did? If you did notice a difference, then type yes in the chat. So I just want to get some feedback and see, did you get something? Doesn't have to be big. If you're like, you could even write, okay, yes, maybe, or no. Those are the 3 type of answers you could write, right? So maybe would be like, I'm not so sure, just not clear. Or no would be definitely not. My heart rate is still just pulsing a lot. And we will talk about, we will talk a lot about the implications of some of this stuff today. And again, tomorrow will be very like, I like it. I want to invest in some kind of a tool, device, tracker, something like that. We'll cover all that tomorrow, so don't worry about it. Keep your credit cards in your wallet. Don't even pull them out. We're just talking about straight, organic, all that stuff. Okay, cool. All right, so Charlene. Also, Lori, I did see your message. You wrote, I can't ever feel my heart. I suppose that's bad too. That is not optimal. You should be able to find, well, I don't really feel my heart just sitting around all the time. If you do know how, like if you meditate often, sometimes you can just kind of sit and feel your heart. But again, that's a level of interoception, internal perception. Interoception is a word, of feeling your heart rate without putting your finger on your neck or anywhere. There are some people who can just naturally just sit and like, I can feel my heart rate in my chest if I just sit and perceive it. And I could do this all without touching my body. So I can do this because it's very subtle, but because I trained so many years with the technology, that's the skill set you develop where you don't need it anymore. That's ideal is where you get to. Cool. So, and again, Lori, it could just be a matter of it's there. You just don't know what to look for. You haven't been, there are certain tools like the leaf, for instance. We'll talk about that more. I'll bring them on camera, show them, review them or whatever. I'm not going to try to review this kind of technology often, but it's worthwhile. The leaf can actually vibrate like a little haptic, like the way your phone vibrates, or like a little boop, boop, exactly when your heart beats, kind of amplifying your heart rate. So you can kind of start to create that specific brain body connection to understand this is my heartbeat. I'm getting that feedback. This kind of stuff does help. It definitely does. So anyway, something to work on potentially. Charlene, good. So you got a yes. Jody, very slight speed up when breathing in, slowing when breathing out, but it's very hard to tell for me. Yeah. So Jody, that's essentially, that's pretty optimal in terms of what you want to, the pattern there is you have it exactly, is when you breathe in, you more or less are trying to discriminate to see if your heart rate increases. And then when you exhale, you should notice that your heart rate slows down. So you did see a good pattern there. That is good. So that's good. And if it's hard to tell, that generally could mean that you're a little bit earlier on in the process. So generally speaking as well, I might say that if, again, not to discriminate too much here, because we're just trying to teach you how to measure it without, I'm not trying to have you go like, oh my God, this is bad or whatever. No, you just, knowing the skill is important. Being able to assess it is also a secondary skill. If you do notice it, but it's not, it's also a question of, is it difficult for you to tell because it's just very like a lightweight heart rate? Like you like, it's very faint. I can barely feel it on my fingertips. When I'm breathing like that and I'm focusing, it's just hard for me to really kind of put the two together. So that could be one way of what someone might mean if they said, it's hard for me to tell. But if it is, you feel it very clearly, but you're like, I think I noticed an increase and then a decrease, but it was very like minimal. Because if you have really good heart rate variability, it's like boom, 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 that is a good HRV. So that becomes extremely obvious. So again, it's just a kind of a matter of what specifically is the difficulty thing. So yeah, if your heart rate is faint, that might be something in that might be related to low blood pressure potentially. I mean, that could be it too. So it just depends. But good. Thank you for sharing that, Barbara. Might be a bit of sensory overload for me since I've already been there all day. Yeah. Central tremor makes it difficult to feel, but I do still feel it. Yeah. So it can be difficult. Again, it's trying to peer through the body, peer through the senses to try and pick up what is not normally available to us. Because you could live your whole life with never, people have made it to 80 without ever checking on their heart, without ever breathing, without any of this nonsense. But I can tell you that it's certainly a longevity thing to do. If you're trying to live a long life and be healthy and not have a sudden heart attack, it's probably going to be important to have some awareness of it. It can be very helpful. I'll certainly share a little bit more about that probably tomorrow, what you can expect to see if you're measuring this while you're sleeping. Because that's one thing. If you're asleep, you're not going to be measuring this. You need to have something on your wrist, on your finger, on your chest, something measuring this while you sleep. And you can see while you sleep, because your breathing is very steady, you can track your HRV really well through the whole sleep cycle. And then you can get a good, sleeping average of HRV. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, definitely. So yeah, certainly I agree, Jody. I mean, I think everybody has the opportunity to improve it. Part of doing this is to measure it, but also in measuring, it's so cool. This is what I love about these kinds of insights, these techniques. They're rare, but they're beautiful to find. They're these little hidden gems in this health world, which is that there are a few things that you can do that do two things at the same time, if not more things. But the two things that are being done by this kind of HRV check-in work, by measuring your heart rate and breathing, is that you're measuring. So you get like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. But also by doing the measuring, you're actually exercising it too. So you actually, by measuring it and doing it, you're improving it at the same time. So you get lots out of it. You get your cake and you get to eat it too. So that's why I think this kind of stuff is good. And then also bonus is if you do get it right and you do feel, if you do get that calming of the heart, you do feel good. I mean, you do feel like, oh, I feel kind of relaxed right now. Like I feel like all right, that was nice. I could definitely see myself doing that again. So getting a habit, making good habits typically require, oftentimes, that there's some little element of it that gives you a little, kind of a dopamine boost, like a little bit of a good feeling. So that's kind of nice. So good. So generally speaking, that is from a very basic perspective, a simple, organic, at home, anywhere you are, out in the woods, way to generally get a snapshot of your heart rate variability using nothing more than your finger and your breath and just counting in for 4 seconds and counting out for 6 seconds. That's it. So the steps are, first, just take a big, how do I feel? Number 2 is you're going to do breathe, right? That's where you start breathing. Just do the breathing. Don't try to measure anything. Just breathe. Because oftentimes, if I just say breathe, even if just checking in with yourself, sometimes just taking a few moments to just go, how do I feel right now? It can be nice. It can be kind of like a break from the franticness of the day. So just doing a check-in can be therapeutic in itself. So I want you to have just one of those. If you make it just one in and you're like, I forgot the rest of the steps, but I remembered that I should just check in with my body. And if you sit there and you don't even breathe, you like forget to breathe. that is actually still beneficial. So step 1, check in. Step 2, 4-6 breathing. Step 3 is then to see, compare, do I feel a little bit better right now compared to when I first checked in? So you're doing 2 check-ins essentially. Check in first, just stop what you're doing and just, you almost might want to hold your breath or just breathe a little bit. So check in, breathe in. And ideally, that breathing out part, if you do have there's a specific type of necklace you can wear that it's kind of like jewelry. You keep it around your neck, and you breathe out of it. It regulates your breath out really, really well, and it definitely does enhance that out breath effect. Probably could enhance this a lot. And also, there's also something really cool about having a physical, like a necklace kind of thing around your neck with you. So you kind of just feel it hitting your chest and you go, oh, it's a reminder to breathe, to do my practice. So you grab it and you go, and you breathe out through the straw, which regulates your breath out. And you do get a better effect if you have it regulated very carefully. So you go, then you check in. Then the next thing you do is you got the straw and you'll do this and you go. So you'll do that. I know this looks weird. People are like, what the hell are you doing? But that's the reality. I think that's why people spend money on these tools and devices, because a little watch can tell you that. You don't have to do any of that. But I think it's kind of cool. You're like, I actually know how to check in with myself without any electronics needed. I mean, I got this. I'm trained. I know how my body works. Thank you very much. I don't have to outsource critical physiological functions to a robot yet. That's a big win right there. If you know how to do what I just told you, it's a pretty big win. So cool. So I hope you learned that kind of that 5 to 6 step process. Starts with something simple, breathing, checking in, breathing and checking your heart rate, and then being like, did it change up or down? Is that, am I optimal? Am I not? And then how you use this, what are the implications of it are, hey, do you think you're stressed? Oftentimes you could be really, really stressed and have no idea. So just sitting at a computer for all day, or being right before a phone call that's important. Oftentimes anything that's going to happen throughout your day that's critical, that's a crucial experience, a crucial event, it's going to be really, really good if you show up for a important thing, an important engagement, calm. You're going to be better off if you show up to important things, unless you're running a marathon, although you should, your body will naturally get you into a sympathetic state. I would say at the passing of one thing to the next, recheck in with your body and get recentered into your HRV, into your vagus nerve, and then get lost in the task. Get lost in the system of what you're doing. Whatever you're showing up for, get lost in that. Your HRV will be up, will be down, doesn't matter so much. But in that intermediary state, when your body and mind is shifting between two different things, that's the time to, hey, okay, cool. So I just completed this. It's time for me to take my break. How do I feel? So for instance, what you're going to do after this video ends, before you go immediately to something else, right when this video ends, I want you to do what I just trained you on. If you do what I just trained you on before going to watch another video or eat food or watch YouTube or watch TikTok or watch whatever the heck is next, or watch a replay of me from yesterday, or whatever you're going to do, or if you're watching a replay of this, you'll watch me tomorrow. Before that next video starts for part 2, which will be great, I mean, it's going to be really cool, just take that moment to quickly just check in with yourself, do some nose breathing, and just, do you feel different? Can you slow things down a little bit? That's all. Can you just put the brakes on things a little bit? Can you move your hands like this, like you're, right? You're like, you see how my fingers and hands are kind of like this? Is like you're playing music with yourself, okay? So that's it. Just hands, slow hands, good HRV, slow hands. That's all. That's all you're doing. Good. Okay. So that's what your homework is. Your homework can be done the split second this video ends, and then you'll be good. So with that, make sure you join part 2 tomorrow for the follow-up, where we'll talk about, okay, cool, how could I do this more regularly, practically? There are some tangible tools that you could use as training wheels and get really, really good at this. Like, you can get better. And I do think that having some technology involved in that process, bar none, can be extremely helpful to really get like a very accurate measurement, so that, Jody, like, even if your HRV is low, you won't have any doubt, okay, it did go up, it did go down. You'll have a number to place on it. Oh, I'm actually at a 13. Oh, I feel like I'm at a 60 right now, 60 ms. The technology will help you get that framework. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. But thanks so much for watching over on the YouTubes. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And then for Facebook,